Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for joining today's Code Along. I'm Will. I'm going to be your moderator today. We'll be kicking off the session in about 5 minutes. We're just going to give everyone a moment to join and get ready. But in the meantime, let us know where you're coming from. We'd love to hear where you're dialing in from, and ping us. Let us know in the comments to the side. Just let you know, for the code along, we'll be using Power BI. So if you haven't already got that installed, please get that done now. Keep an eye on the comments, and I'll be sharing links throughout. And please note the session is being recorded, and the recording will be sent to everyone who's registered for the event. I'll send registration to the event shortly as well. If you haven't already, register and and if not, you can also head over to www.datacamp.com/webinars2. Cool. I will send those through, and I'll be back in a few minutes to introduce our hosts. Hi everyone, thanks very much for joining today's Code Along. We'll be starting in a couple of minutes. We're just going to give everyone a few more minutes to join. My name is Will. I'll be your moderator today. In the meantime, we'd love to keep hearing where you're from. We're loving all the comments coming in. Just let you know, for the Code Along, we'll be using Power BI. So if you haven't already got that installed, please get that done now. Keep an eye on the comments, and I'll share a link so you can code along with us. It is actually already in there, and I will send it through again, so it's at the top of your feed. Just to note, this session is being recorded, and the recording will be sent to everyone that has registered for the event. If you haven't already, please register for the event. We'll be able to send you all the recording resources to you. And if not, you could also head over to datacamp.com/webinars2, where all the information is there also. Be back in a couple of minutes to introduce our hosts. Okay, guys, looks like we are nearly ready to begin. So just once more, so everyone's on the same page. We're going to be using Power BI. So if you haven't already got that installed, please get that in now. To register for the event, I've put the link in the comments a couple times, so it should be there. When you register the event, you'll receive the recording and all the resources you need afterwards. If not, you can always head to datacamp.com/webinars 2. Cool. Well, that is, fortunately for you guys, everything from me. I'm going to hand you over to your host, Richie. Richie, if you'd like to take it away.
All right. Thank you for the intro, Will. All right. So welcome, data scamps and data champs. This is Richie. And today we are going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, namely data visualization. So I feel that being able to draw plots just provides perhaps the best value to effort ratio of almost any data analysis skill. So it's relatively easy to learn, but it's just incredibly useful in a wide variety of situations. So in this session, you'll be learning how to create plots in Power BI. And we're keeping this session pretty beginner focused. So you're going to be learning how to get started working with Power BI and drawing some data visualizations. Our guest is Nick Switzer. He's a sales analytics solution lead at the medical tech provider Stryker. And Nick's got a pretty interesting career because he didn't start in data analytics. He originally worked in engineering and supply chain and only later moved into data. Nick is the instructor for the Supply Chain Analytics in Power BI course, and that's what today's session is loosely based on. So over to you, Nick.
All right. Well, thank you, Richie, for the introduction. I am really excited to be here. I'm a fan of the Data Framed podcast, so it's sort of nerding out on the fact that I'm here with Richie. So it's very exciting. And also, I'm a big fan of Data Camp. I'm a student as well, mostly for R Python work, so as well as being an instructor. So it's just an honor to be here and a privilege to share with you all today. So like Richie said, we're going to go through some basic visualization in Power BI. We're just going to get started. This is intended for beginners, but if you're a seasoned pro or a veteran with a little bit of time in Power BI, you still might be able to pick up some tricks and tips along the way from this, but it is definitely focused on beginners. So the data set that we'll be using today is the Surgery Center Quality Metrics from the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So that's healthcare, United States healthcare data. CMS is the largest provider or insurer of healthcare, but it's all public, and so it's an amazing data set, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But what we're going to be diving into from a Power BI perspective today is making a straightforward report. We're going to have a scatter plot. We're going to use top end filters if you've ever used those. I'm a big fan of those for how they can make the data more easily digestible. And so we'll talk about increasing report space. This is one of my favorite tricks that we can go through too, that helps really make data storytelling a lot easier to do than I think standard Power BI reports do. So, but it's pretty straightforward when we get into it. And then also, if we have the time, we'll get started with a map. So, and really, why are we doing this? Why do we build Power BI reports and dashboards? I mean, it's always important that we're building these reports to drive decisions. We don't just make the report, even though it is great if you make something that's beautiful. And in a lot of cases, that's okay too. But for me, I love that on the other side, somebody is taking that data and making their lives better with a decision based on that. So like Will was saying in the intro, this is all going to be on Power BI desktop. So if you don't have it, you can go to microsoft.com/Power BI. and you can click on products, you can download it, and don't stress if you're doing that now and falling behind. If you don't have it already, we are recording the session, so you can spend some time over your weekend, or whenever you want to, just re-going over the session. So if you get behind, but so you can download and get it installed. So now for our task today, we are going to build a dashboard to theoretically help patients, friends, and families assess their healthcare options. So we have data from surgery centers, and we want to help them choose the surgery center that might have the best outcomes for them. So the data set specifically, the title is Ambulatory Surgical Center Quality Measures, and it's at the facility level. And it's available at data.cms.gov. There's lots of great data sets there. We use some data that's based on that for our work at Stryker. And it's very valuable. And if you're looking to build a portfolio to get into the analytics space, it's just one of many, many great data sets. So definitely dive in there. So some definitions that'll be useful for us today. There is a surgery center. It's not a hospital. It's a healthcare facility separate from a hospital that focuses on outpatient surgery. And outpatient surgery is surgery that basically you don't need to stay overnight at a hospital. It doesn't require hospitalization afterwards. So the ambulatory part just means that you can walk out, even though you don't have to walk out. The idea is that you can go home, you can rest in your own bed that night after the operation. So these are still very serious procedures, but they don't require hospitalization. And then the main target that we're looking at today, or the main feature of these, is that there's a risk standardized hospital visit rate. The RSHV rate is how what number of patients that go get these operations end up going to the hospital within 7 days of having that surgery. So that could be an indication that maybe the surgery wasn't performed properly, something went wrong, and that's something you'd like a heads up on. So every surgery has its own inherent risk, and we'll see that there's definitely baseline RSHV rates, but it's something that if you can choose to minimize it, you'd probably prefer not to go to the hospital in an unplanned way. At least that's how I approach my weekends, is not trying to go to the hospital in an unplanned way. So, all right. So we have the data set in Power BI already. You can always get the CSVs from, or connect to the API at cms.gov. But in this case, we've just provided it for sake of getting straight to the visualizations today. And that's in a link that I believe has been sent out. And then there's also, CMS has a great data dictionary for us to use. So with that, Richie, are we good to dive into the Power BI visualizations now? Ooh. All right, I think you might be muted. Oh.
Sorry, that was yes, ready to go to Power BI.
Awesome. Yes, I felt it. You see in here we have a very abridged data catalog. Like I mentioned, the CMS has a great data catalog where you can go to get the definitions on some of these rates, and some of the data that is in this data set. So I've written our task here. So we're going to create a report investigating urology quality metrics to help patients explore their options. So when I look at a data set at first, I usually just come over here to the right to this data pane, and I scroll through, and if there's not too many different columns in the data set, I might scroll up and down, but I'm not seeing anything too quickly here. So I also prefer to go to the table view, and that'll give me a better idea what the data is looking like under there. So here's a look at our data set. It's a CSV that's already been imported. We've got facility names here, their facility IDs, and then lots of different data about where they're located, the year that the data came from. But then we have all these rates that are kind of meaningless unless you have that data catalog. So that's probably why they have a good data catalog, because everything's labeled ASC 9, ASC 9 footnote. I don't know what those are. So in our case, I've pulled out ASC 18 is the one that focuses on urology surgery. So really, we just want to focus on this set here.
To interrupt, can we just bump up the text size a little bit for people who are on small screens? Can you do a bit
sure.
Zoom? Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So really, we're looking at the ASC 18, and I know this part has stayed small in the columns here, but so if we're going to explore options for getting surgery done at a surgery center, and just I want to understand this data at a national level, we can just take a look at how many surgery centers are we talking about in the United States. We got 50 different states, but how many are performing these urology surgeries? So again, I'm focusing on ASC 18, and I'm going to pull out the facility ID actually, and we're just going to make a simple card here. So it automatically gives me a table. I'm going to come to the visualization pane, turn this into a card, and instead of seeing the first facility ID, I'm going to come here to the visualizations tab. And right now it's summarizing this by the first, but I want the count, the distinct count of facilities that are performing, or sorry, the distinct count of the facilities that meet this criteria. And I'm sorry, I noticed I didn't intend to do this, and but I had left a filter in here that a lot of you may see. I've already filtered for where the total cases are greater than 0. So we've got 548 facilities that are performing the urology surgeries. I'm going to clear that really quickly, and then we'll see, okay, we've got over 5,000 facilities in this data set. So about 10% are actually performing the surgeries that we're looking at. So I'm going to go, I cleared that filter. I'm going to go back, and now for this entire page, I will be filtering, since we're focused on the urology surgeries, we will be filtering for the total cases of this AS18 greater than 0. And we'll see, oh, we go back down to 548 surgery centers. We could leave it as count as a facility ID. And if I'm doing just exploratory data analysis, a lot of times I'll leave, almost all the time I leave these with their basic, whatever the Power BI auto-populated title is. But in the case where we're making a dashboard for someone or a dashboard or a report for someone to use, I'm going to go ahead and change the name to surgery centers, sort of changing the name of the field, surgery centers performing urology procedures. And that's a little bit too long. In this case, I'm just going to go back, and I think we've got ASC all over the place. I try to, a lot of the feedback when I sent this to some friends at first is, oh, there's so many acronyms in here. And as data people, we always end up dealing with acronyms, RSHV, ASC, trying to reduce the acronyms as much as possible. But in this case, we still can get we can use it. to give us a little bit more space for text. So pretty straightforward. We have the count of facilities doing these. And then one of the first things I do also from an exploratory standpoint is I like to look at a scatter plot, or a scatter chart as it's called here. So really our target metric, we don't have too many metrics around the ASE 18. We've got the rate, and we have some other data here, and we have the total cases. So we could explore relationships between the RSHV rate for urology and maybe some of the other surgeries. But in this case, I think a natural question is, does performing more of these surgeries lead a surgery center to be more proficient? So I would like to explore that using a scatter chart or a scatter plot. I'm going to select the scatter plot visual, and I'm going to take total cases and put that on my x-axis, and take the RSHV rate and put that on the y-axis. And right now it's just giving us the sum for everything. So we need to put the ID of the facilities to, we need to come into the visualization area, and where we've placed the RSHV rate, it says sum, and we'll just click on this little caret down here and go to do not summarize. And now we see, okay, we've got a nice distribution of RSHV rates here, total cases rather, sorry. And one thing that I didn't discover until much later in my Power BI career was that I always just changed it in the visualization. But what you can also do is you can change the way this column summarizes as a default. So honestly, for this rate, I don't ever want to be summing the rates. And so I'm going to come back here and select do not summarize. So I've already selected it for the visual. It won't change, but in the future, when I pull this rate in, it will not auto summarize. And then for this visualization, I'll do the same, and I'm going to blow this visualization up in a second. I'm sorry I left it so small. I can't see it that well either. The dots are all so bunched together. So here, I should have made that larger earlier. So we can see we've got total cases across the bottom, and then we have the RSHV rate, and we notice that the rate is actually expressed, even though, we'll just look at this one. I know that's small, but it says the RSHV rate is 8.3. So I know we're supposed to have something like 100 to 200 folks on the call. The rate here, it might not sound that bad. Oh, you have an 8% chance of going to the hospital on an unexpected visit. But if 100 of us are going, that means 8 of us are going to end up going to the hospital in an unexpected way. So we definitely want to minimize that, our chances of ending up in the hospital after going to a surgery center. And I feel bad. I feel bad for calling this out, but really we're trying to focus on the best ones here. So we've got our scatter plot. We see maybe there's somewhat of an inverse relationship, but it's kind of stretching there. So we have explored it, and if a surgery center says, hey, we do the most in town, maybe that's reason to believe that they'll have a lower rate, but I wouldn't necessarily just look at that. I would love to know their rate before going in. So I want to point out some other things that I love to do with scatter plots. And one of those, well, actually the first one, we have this performance category over here. And I'm just going to pull this out. This is not going to be a long-term visualization, but pull this in to see what it is. We've got performance category, no different than national rate and worse than national rate. So we can use that to give us we can use that as the legend in the visualization to give us sort of a color guide to see, till we can quickly see where a surgery center is actually different, statistically significantly different from the national rate. And so part of the preparation for this is we wrote a DAX column here. You can feel free to look at it, but we're going to use this DAX column because it's a little bit more abbreviated and easier to see when we pull it in. So I'm pulling in this performance category to the legend, and then the ones really stick out. And I don't know if dark blue quite tells the story of what we're trying to say here. So these are the places with the higher rates. So we want that to be highlighted. And so I'm going to come in and I would want to change the color on these. Change the color on these dots. And I have now, all right, so we come to markers, and then we can scroll down to color. So within markers, so we're at the visual pane tab, and then we come to markers, and then we find the color, and we'd say, okay, what really highlights worse than national rate? And I'm probably going to go, I want more of an alarm than a red. A red might be too harsh. So I'll go with an alarming yellow here, just so we know, okay, we need to have a good reason for choosing these surgery centers. So I'm going to get rid of this visual. So what else can we do with the scatter plot? And I guess I'm realizing I could have made this also larger by going into focus mode. So if you hover in the upper right of the visualization, you can blow up the scatter plot. And now we can get down and even deeper into it. So this is very useful, and actually a very useful tool for your users as well. So a lot of times I deal with users who are asking to see, who aren't in Power BI all day. They look at Power BI maybe once a week to inform their decisions, but they don't know all the tools and tricks. So I end up telling them about focus mode all the time, just so they can get in and see what's in each visualization with a little bit more granularity. So we've blown this up, and I'm also looking at this. It's hard to tell. We could pull out some, when we will later, pull out some other statistics from this. But I would like to know, naturally, I jump to what's the median. If I just, I want to know if I'm going to choose one at random, sorry, not choose one at random, but if I want to know where the middle point is, am I going to be, so I have a good point of comparison. Am I doing better than the middle of the data set or not? So we can come over in the visualizations tab and we can click through to this further analysis. We have this magnifying glass, and it's got all sorts of stuff. I'll just flash. It can give you a trend line. We don't see too much from the trend line there, but it is nice. In this case, I want to show the median RSHV rate. So I'm going to click on Y-axis constant line. That will give us a constant line on the vertical axis. And we are going to add a line here, and it defaults to 0. So for this value, we could come type in a value, but I don't know what the median is yet. So I'll come and click on this function button, and now we get to select the field that we are going to base this on. and we want to see the median RSHV rate. So I can look up RSHV. We're looking at ASE 18, and we can come over to our summarization mode. And for this line, we want to see the median. So we'll click the median, and there it is. That's beautiful. So now I can see, okay, if I'm choosing anybody on the bottom half, that's probably gonna, that's a better bet in terms of reducing my risk of surgery, of going to the hospital after this operation. So I'm going to label this median, and I find this very useful all the time, is also obviously putting the data label in, so people know what they're looking at. So we can come here, we can turn the data label on, and then the style is we can give it the value. Oh, and it's all the way over here to the left. Before we fix what we're showing, we go to the horizontal position, put it out here to the right. It's got, we might not, it might be too far to the right now to see in focus mode. So it's out here. I'm going to take us out of focus mode, so we can see our median label. And I love to actually give them the name of the line as well. So I give them both name and the median is 5.1. So that's our basic scatter plot. Now we've done some investigation, and this could tell our, back to what we actually want to communicate to the to the patients and potentially to their families, is we have the national median. You could look for a surgery center that is more experienced than this. If they do tons of procedures, that could indicate that they have a lower rate, but it's not necessarily, it's not a great indicator, actually. So I mean, it's an interesting data point, how many total cases they do, but it doesn't actually help us that much. So and as a quick aside, one of the things I love about data is actually it can tell you what it doesn't matter to pay attention to. So a lot of times there's a lot of false signals, and I think number of cases is one of those type of false signals that people could throw out as, hey, we're great, we do the most in the city. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean you're the best. So when you use data, you can see that all right, it's not actually, you don't need to fall for the false signals, and you don't need to pay attention to those all the time. But you don't know that unless you do the analysis and look at the relationship. All right. I can move on. I have not been able to look over and check out if we have a lot of questions or anything. Should I keep rolling, or should we take a question pause or anything like that?
We have a couple of questions from the audience already. If you do have any questions for Nick, please do ask them in the chat. Actually, the two questions are slightly more general questions, so maybe we'll cover those at the end.
Okay.
But I do have a question for you, just while we're letting people think of their own questions. So we've covered scatter plots a lot. I'm curious as to when you can just draw like a simple scatter plot and just have the points they're showing, and when you need to do all this extra work to like add the titles and figure out axis labels and all that sort of thing. Do you have a sense of like when that's important or not?
Well, honestly, I usually use the scatter plots for investigation. And so if I put a scatter plot up and I don't see any relationship, a clear relationship, then usually I have learned something from that, but I don't keep it. But very frequently, if I'm communicating to other people in the business and I have a story to tell with the scatter plot, I'm pulling in almost always a median line or a trend line or something like that. the performance categories I wouldn't necessarily usually use, but I think the lines actually help tell whatever story you're trying to tell. In this, so I use those very frequently, and yeah, and then if I don't see a relationship, and there's, in this case, the story is total cases don't necessarily make for a lower rate. It's not a guarantee. And if that's the story I was trying to tell, I would probably, that's the story we've shown. So, but usually, otherwise, I wouldn't probably show this, unless there was a hypothesis that we were actually trying to maybe debunk. I wouldn't usually use the scatter plot. So it's either it's really to look at a hypothesis between about a relationship between two different variables.
Okay,
maybe more variables, but yeah.
So adding those extra bits of detail just helps clarify what's happening and helps you develop that story from the relationship between the two variables.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Wonderful. All right. I think since we've not got many questions from the audience, we'll do a longer Q&A at the end. But for now, you can carry on with going through creating the plots.
Sounds great. So I'm going to change the title on this. This is our last bit on the last bit on the scatter chart, and I am just going to say urology RSHP versus total cases. So I might, in other cases, I might actually write a sentence about what we think we're seeing here, but in this case, I'm just going to leave it because we might be a little short on time for some of the other things we're looking to get to. So you can see, I feel like we're quickly running out of space. And so I'm excited to show this, the way to make more space, but we will get there in just a second. So we're looking at ASCs, these surgery centers from all across the country. One of the things that naturally comes up, and maybe it's just a competitive nature, but it's just also a question is are there states that are much better? Is there a location in the United States where we have a huge difference by state in the performance of the surgery centers? So for that, I am going to pull up we'll just use a column chart. And in the beginning, we see that we have state for each of these facilities. So on our x-axis, I will pull in state, and I want to see the RSHV rate. Oh, I almost pulled the wrong one. I pulled the orthopedic surgery one. So the ASE 18 urology rate, and this was not my intention, but we'll go into focus mode real quick. We can see there's a huge variance in the cases per state, or I'm sorry, facilities per state. I mean, with California having the most, north of 60 surgery centers, and Wyoming down here with just a few, and that correlates pretty well with population. But what we really want to see is the RSHV rates here. So we've seen the number of different count of rates, but we want to summarize this as median. And so it had to choose a default summarization in this case. So, okay, this is crazy. We can't really get much of that. Even we can go to focus mode, but honestly, I lose track here. I really want to focus, since we're focusing on choosing the surgery center with the lowest rates. I want to focus on just this tail over here. We want to look at the lowest rates. So what we can do is utilize the top end filter for here in Power BI. So we're going to look at the state, and we have our filtering options. We open our filter pane. We have basic filtering. We could select them by their state abbreviation. But what we want to know here is just which states should I focus on if I want the lowest risk RSHV. So I don't think people actually shop for I don't think people actually shop for their surgery centers this way. Although maybe you could look at states in your neighborhood. It's not. I don't think it's common to travel that far for these, but maybe it's worth it. It's something to consider. So in this case, let's look at the bottom 7. So I want to show this, the bottom 7 items, and then, oops, I'll pull the RSHV rate into here. And in this case, we want to see the bottom median. So which states are going to give us, are we most likely to have the best? Okay, 7 is even a little bit crowded. So we'll go to bottom 5. And so this drives tons of focus. Oops, I didn't apply my 5. Oh, or we have a tie with the medians here, but sorry, to the point of top end filtering, I have been in a lot of meetings in life where the data point that is maybe the least important is also drawing the most attention. And so if you show too many data points, you can overwhelm the users, and you can also you invite distractions that are not associated with the biggest drivers of what you're looking to demonstrate. So that's one. I love the bottom or the top end filter in Power BI. And so we see we've got South Dakota, Delaware, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania. So lots of different states, and Alabama here. So lots of different states, and without knowing the geography of the United States, you don't necessarily see if there's any sort of trend here. But now we know we have some direction given to our patients if they are in a position to travel. But also we chose this to just demonstrate the top end, and maybe get our geography brains going a little bit. So at this point, I'm going to actually give a label, because I'm actually to a point where I feel like I'm running out of space. So let's label our tool here, and sorry, we'll keep this large Arial black font, and we'll say, all right, the best surgery centers for urology by RSHV rate. So you can quickly put this at the top and tell our users what they're looking at, and then one design principle that we right now, we've just been throwing the plots onto the report, but now as we start to think through, how is our user going to interpret this, we really want to start from the top left, and then attention will flow from there. So in this case, I mean, we're kind of giving a scope or a size of this. The data set that we're looking at, 548 surgery centers, and then I'm just going to put the total cases up here for a second. Oh no, actually, in our final file, I also want to call out that median rate really quickly. So I am going to just do a simple copy paste here, because I like the format of this card. It's large and communicates quickly, but I want to also pull out that median, because I think that kind of sets everybody what's your baseline risk going into risk of going to the hospital after going to for this procedure. So I've copied this card over. I'm going to just pull the RSHV rate in. It has defaulted to count, but I want to show the national median. And I am just going to label this national median here. Oh. All right, so this, so far, we don't have a ton of direction for our users, except that we could tell them which state to go to, and not necessarily to trust the number of cases performed as an indicator. But we need to make some space and for our report, and really, something that someone on our team, I mean, this has always been available in Power BI, but we're going to come and click on any space here in the canvas, and we can see that we can change our canvas here. And this is, oops, I've accidentally created a Q&A. So we can change our canvas. So this is where you can add a picture, you can add as your background, you can do lots of cool stuff. But in this case, I am actually going to make our canvas longer. So we could choose a letter format or just do custom pixel by pixel. So I'm going to estimate that I need, our height is 720 right now. I'm going to estimate we need another 300 pixels here. And honestly, this is really powerful. We're not making that many visualizations today, but it kind of harnesses what a lot of folks are used to, which is scrolling. And I'm not an advocate for doom scrolling or spending too much of your life in the scrolling world, but it's really great when you're trying to tell a story, and that's just kind of how people operate a lot. So a lot of times, instead of having separate reports where you have to click through, that slows users down. So if you had something like 8 visuals and you needed to tell a story, you just need to extend that canvas. So just a small tweak to the existing Power BI. And something again that I wish I had discovered earlier. So now I'm going to jump into one of my favorite parts of Power BI, which is the map. They have lots of different map visualizations, and it can be helpful if you're looking for geographic trends in your data, or if you're just trying to help direct someone and help them get an understanding of the underlying data set if there's any location involved. So in this case, surgery centers are definitely location data. So I definitely recommend checking out the Azure maps, but for today we'll use the standard map. I believe there's less permissions involved. So if we scroll down to the bottom, we see lots of this, lots of the data or the location data and facility name. So I am going to use zip code, and it does a lot of the geocoding on its own. And now we see here are the surgery centers. It's already populated those for us. And it is overwhelming, again, just kind of like when we did 50 states. It's hard to take it all in, but generally it correlates with the location of our surgery centers is correlating with highly populated areas. We see lots on the coast, on the coasts rather. And so to highlight each one of these, first off, I am going to reduce this to we'd use the top end filter again to show which facilities have the most. So we're going to dial down to maybe 50 facilities instead. So we'll pull a facility name, or really facility ID we could use as well. Pull in top N, change our filter to top N. We'll pull total cases. Oh, you know what? I made a mistake here. I want to actually focus on the RSHV rate, because we want to direct our patients and families to the facilities that have the lowest risk. So we're highlighting the ones who have the best outcome data. And let's do top 50 in the country here. Okay, that's a little better. And I'm gonna just extend this a little bit so we can see. And so I still want, we have these bubbles here. I would love some sort of visualization to quickly help them pop out. And one of the things that that helps differentiate maybe the size of these would be the total cases. So we can pull that into bubble size. And now we've got much larger bubbles for the ones that do the most. So again, that's not necessarily what we're looking for to drive the best outcomes, but it is helpful. And let's see, one of the things I really definitely want to demonstrate here is we're looking at the top 50 across the nation, but we have all these states that have the best medians as a state. So let's go ahead and click on Alabama. I see a couple there. And now we can, the interaction is awesome in Power BI as well. So when I click on Alabama, then we see the top surgery centers in Alabama by there. And in this case, we're doing oh no. I'm sorry, I'm sure somebody in the chat or somebody has noticed this already, but we're actually looking for the bottom 50. We're looking, I fell for it. When we say the best, often we think the top, but in this case, the bottom is the lowest, or lowest, less risky.
I was wondering about that. I was going to ask you, like, is it a really good idea to go to Alabama for your surgery, or a really good idea to leave Alabama, like not go to Alabama for your surgery?
Yeah, we need to, we'll zoom out. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's actually here we're looking at, it has the median RSHV rate is below this national median. So, if you're just choosing at random, you're more likely in Alabama to be below the national median. And we see this facilities here. There's a few, and then there's one here that I probably wouldn't recommend right away. So we can see where they are on the map.
Is it worth just going through and just clarifying like what the sort of meaning of this is then? So the RSHV rate, this is like how many people are getting hospitalized, what was it, within 7 days after surgery?
Yes. Yeah.
And so you actually want this number to be as low as possible. And
yeah.
So do we need to redraw that plot then? What happens if we update?
Well, this plot is by the median, by the low already.
Okay.
And I just had pulled the wrong filter for my map here.
Gotcha.
And yeah, so, but yeah, we're definitely looking for the lowest rate.
So was that SD? So is that South Dakota is the best place then?
It sure is. And now it looks like we've only got one surgery center here. But they have a below average rate there. And I'm just going to pull the facility name into the tooltips here. So when we hover over it, sometimes it takes the tooltips can be a little slow on the maps, but all right, click in and out. And we should be getting I'm sorry, the facility name is here. I pulled the facility name into the wrong. So if I'm going by zip code, we're looking on the map, urology specialists here in South Dakota. So maybe it would have been wise to also have a filter for just the number of cases. And actually, let's go back to that visualization. I think I do have this in the solution and just forgot to add it. But if we filter by the number of cases, the median isn't super meaningful for just one. I mean, it does tell us. So let's say total cases above. I'm sorry, I'm not looking for total cases. Now we're looking for facility names. So the count of facility names, facility IDs. So let's look at, we're going to change this to filter for states where, oh, sorry, I want to be doing this by the count of facility, but I have not. All right. We'll have to, you can check that out in the solution, but we've got one more thing I wanted to show from this, because this obviously, if we do have the map, it can show us the location points, but almost always when I have a map, I'm putting a table with it so that we can actually see what's being displayed. So in this case, we want a simple table with the facility name and the RSHV rate. So facility name will be our first column. I'm going to make that column much thinner, and then we'll pull in the RSHV rate, and we'll sort that column for the lowest RSHV rate. So we're looking for the lowest rates. I'm going to take all my filters back. And so now when we click on, let's go to Georgia. We haven't clicked on that one yet. We can see not only on the map how these surgery centers, where they are, but also we can see, okay, if I want to go to the absolute lowest rate, RSHV rate, then it's Gainesville Urology. All right, so I know we're running sort of short on time, so I would definitely change this title here, but I guess if we had more time, I would change this title and also go and figure out how I did the the filtering by the number of facilities in each state on this. But I want to save time for questions, so I will do that afterwards, and you can find it in the solution notebook.
All right, super. Thank you very much, Nick. Yeah, that was very cool. Like it's nice the way you can just like grab all those different plots together and they make a sort of coherent sense as a whole. And you got that interactivity that affects multiple plots. So that sort of reactivity where you're updating several plots at a time, that's absolutely valuable for dashboarding. And so, yeah, thank you very much for showing us all that. Now, before we get to audience Q&A, because we have got some good questions in there.
Okay.
I just want to let you know, next Thursday, so that's September the 28th, we've got a very special event. So we've got the Radar Virtual Conference. So we're going to be talking all about data literacy and AI literacy. We've got a lot of big speakers, like very big names in the world of data literacy coming to join us. So please do register for that. So I think Will is just posting links to that in the chat. And with that, we've got a good 5 minutes or so to go through some questions. So there were lots of people in the chat talking about the PL 300 exam. So this is the professional Power BI exam that Microsoft runs. So Microsoft makes Power BI and they have their own certification to go along with it. Now, the data analyst with Power BI career track is going to take you through all the skills you need with that. So perhaps Will can post a link to our Power BI career track. Nick, I don't know, is this something you've taken yourself or you've had colleagues take the Microsoft certification for Power BI?
I have not taken it. I got started with Power BI at their dashboard in a day. I'm not sure if they're doing those anymore, but those are a wonderful way to get started as well. But I have not taken that. I think it would, I think it definitely would look good as an indicator, but it's not something that I think of as a must-have for getting started.
All right. I mean, certainly if you want to get your first job as a data analyst and using Power BI, then having that extra credential is possibly worthwhile. So to go back to Shivraj, your original question, how long does it take to prepare for this? So the courses in the data analyst with Power BI career track. There's about 50 hours of content, and that's probably going to get you part way. You're going to need to do some like practicing on your own as well. So you're looking at sort of between 50 and 100 hours, I think, to prepare for that. And it depends on how much data analysis experience you've got. Next question comes from Jennifer. Nick, I don't know, do you have an opinion on the difference between Power BI and Tableau?
It's hotly debated, or at least was hotly debated, because we used to use both in the office. But in general, Microsoft Power BI works really, really well because all of our users have Microsoft accounts, and they're using Outlook, and everything just syncs together really, really well. One thing we didn't get into, because this was a beginning course, is the row level security. And I know you can do row level security in Tableau, but I think it works really, really well in Power BI, and it's something that can take your reporting to the next level, where you're just limiting users to seeing the data that's associated with them. So they see the rows, and you write the rules for that. So that's one of the awesome parts about leveraging and just being in the Microsoft ecosystem. I didn't mean to make a commercial for Microsoft, but like, there's a free one, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of like pretty powerful business intelligence tools now. So trying to decide between like Power BI or Tableau, it's like from a drawing dashboards, drawing plots, and like creating dashboards point of view, you're going to be happy with either of them. It's really a lot about like the rest of your tech ecosystem and how it integrates with that.
Yeah. And I know people who have definitely transitioned and now are sort of bilingual in both the BI systems. And yeah, I think that's awesome. That's a way to be.
All right. One last question. So this comes from Ferris. So we didn't cover anything with DAX. So DAX is is one of the programming languages built into Power BI, and basically, Ferris would like to know, when do you need to care about DAX?
Even with this very straightforward data set, I ended up making just a few DAX calculations, and I think I showed one of them. But I think pretty early in your Power BI usage, it's very powerful, and yeah, I don't think we have almost any reports that have zero DAX, and we do a lot in Power Query as well before the data gets to the visualization stage, but yeah, we use quite a lot of DAX. So I definitely encourage diving in with DAX.
Absolutely. So I think when DataCamp teaches the curriculum, it's like we have an intro to Power BI course, and then like DAX is like the very next course. So it's something you need to learn pretty sharpish. It sounds scary, but it's actually, it always looks to me like it's just sort of fancy Excel formulas. It's that kind of style of thing. So yeah, you can probably get started with it pretty easily.
Yeah, I think there's a curve, there's a learning curve, and it gets maybe a little bit, it's not fun in the middle, but then after a while, it definitely picks up. So easy to start, and then really fun once you get into the more advanced stuff. So
all right, you just got a hump to get over in the middle. But anyway, it's good to know that it's easy to get started with.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. So with that, I think we're at time. Thank you once again, Nick. Great stuff, and always nice to see how you think about building dashboards. Thank you to Will for moderating. Thank you to everyone who asked us the question. Thank you to everyone who showed up today. Please do join us next Thursday for the Radar Virtual Conference, and I hope to see you again in further webinars and code alongs in October. Excellent. All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.